Welcome back to The Line. We talked about national politics earlier this hour. Let's move on to the impact of local races and what the future looks like for politics here in New Mexico. Now, Senate Majority Leader Michael Sanchez lost his re-election bid, as you know. The Santa Fe New Mexican reports that he is considering a libel lawsuit against Jay McCluskey. He is the advisor to Governor Martinez, who runs the Advance New Mexico PAC. And Laura, it'd be very difficult to win a libel suit. My limited understanding about libel suits, it's a very hard thing to prove. What would be the point of actually entering into a protracted sort of a libel situation here?
Well, if nothing else, to be a thorn in the side of McCluskey and Martinez. You know, there's always that at the most basic level.
Sure.
It could be.
Yeah.
So it's difficult because any libel suit, basically, you have to show that there was that they essentially were telling lies. But when it comes to a public figure, the standard is a little bit higher. So with a public figure, it's not just that there were lies, but there had to be malicious intent in those lies. And so that threshold makes it more difficult because you have to actually show that there was a concerted effort to be, you know, malicious in the way that they were spreading those falsehoods. So it makes it difficult, but just filing anything against them might, I mean, already that means that they're going to have to hire somebody to defend them, and it would be in the news. And so there's a strategy there, of course.
Right.
So I think the question in my mind is, just given everything that I believe Senator Sanchez has done for New Mexico, whether he wants to sort of be mired down by this kind of negativity. Because it sounds like he's interested in continuing his law practice, focusing on his community. I think for me, just looking at that community, at his district, you know, it's unfortunate because they go from having a very high profile, very effective senator that was representing them and had obviously a lot of pull in the Senate to essentially a virtual unknown who doesn't, as far as I know, have any background in government. It's going to be a steep learning curve for him. It's going to be I mean, he'll be at the bottom of every list just because he's a brand new freshman coming in, and that's going to be tough for the people of that district.
It's a steep fall, absolutely. The old backbencher syndrome, and that happens. Inez, you know, the idea about PACs and where we are in this state, we have a little more clarity now that we have the election, but it was no surprise to anybody the amount of money that was going to be spent, you know, the tone and all that kind of thing. How do we consider PACs right now, local PACs? Are too much influence? Not, you know, it's a difficulty at this point.
Well, the Supreme Court has basically said money is speech, so they have money and they spent it. And what it means is that you can lie in an ad and nobody can do anything to you unless somehow you can counter it. And it's very hard to counter a good lie. In terms of influence, you know, Sanchez obviously had incredible power. He'd been there forever, not quite, but, you know, close to it. And for Santa Fe, what this means is you're going to have perhaps Peter Wirth from Santa Fe as the new Senate leader, and then if Brian Egoff is elected speaker, that's two men from Santa Fe who actually from the same part of town, because Wirth represented. It's the same district, exactly.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting little deal. But when you take out someone with that much influence and power who knows how to get bills passed and knows how to stop bills, for the governor, that means, you know, if she's working with someone a little less experienced, she might be able to sneak some things through that she wants.
Interesting there, Tom. Pick up on that too, because if you think about, you know, power is an interesting thing. It's all in how you use it, so to speak. Democrats have the power now, so is it easier to make up for the loss of Michael Sanchez as opposed to if they were, obviously they were not in the minority on the Senate side, but you know what I mean. Any loss is tough on that side. So yeah.
Well, yeah, you know, they unleashed the liberal progressive, you know, side of the Democratic Party, and you know, if it shakes out as Inez has indicated, you know, the governor is not going to have a cakewalk here. I mean, you're gonna actually have more opposition than they ever saw with Senator Michael Sanchez. Which, just as an aside, I thought it was very interesting. You know, what I always kind of look for when I, you know, look at these smear campaigns, like the ones that were instituted against Senator Sanchez, is what do other members of their same body are saying? What are the other members of the Senate saying? Right. And what I thought was really interesting was I never did hear any other Republican senators come out against Senator Michael Sanchez, just because he was always working to, you know, make sure everybody's included. They had different opinions, clearly.
Right.
But I'll be interested to see if he does end up moving forward with the libel suit. I think it's a good shot across the bow.
Yeah.
Most definitely.
Isn't that funny? Let's talk about governors. We had an interesting week this week, or a couple of weeks. We've had some fairly high-profile Democrats, Trip Jennings, mention they would seriously consider running for governor here. It's a very interesting thing. Let's take Tom Udall right off the bat. He's looking at it. I mean, I love that quote. He's looking right at it. Your thoughts on that?
I mean, my thoughts on that, the funny thing, I was just kind of chuckling because it's like election happened and boom, the news was out there, and it's like 2 years ahead. That's what the time frame. That Tom Udall is considering, that's a sign that, had the Democrats taken the Senate, he might have actually been thinking about staying possibly, because he could have headed a committee. Now he's thinking about coming back. The question now is behind the scenes, kind of like, is that the first move to clear the decks? Tom Udall kind of basically saying, I'm the U.S. Senator, I'm coming back. And then if that's true, then all the other pieces and how they move.
Right.
That's what I'm watching for the next 5
I appreciate you saying that about clearing the decks. That is a strategy, as you know, you've run at campaigns before, Laura, and all that kind of a thing. But politicians being what they are, sometimes people don't see a deck being cleared, or they see it being cleared for them otherwise. Do you know what I mean? Is that necessarily going to work? Is it Tom Udall a big enough name to actually clear the decks here at this point, do you think?
Well, of the other two names that I've heard pop up, Michelle Lujan Grisham and Hector Valderas, I think Michelle is scrappy. She's the kind of person who is not afraid to jump into a very heated, contested primary. She took on Martin Heinrich for that seat in the primary back when he was running for that. So I don't see her shying away. I can't really read the tea leaves on the Hector camp. But in terms of their bases, I mean, Hector's from northern New Mexico. He's the Wagon Mound guy. He's Attorney General. So he's got that sort of platform, and he's got some time to maybe do some work there. Michelle's in some ways limited because she's in a congressional district. So her base is, Albuquerque Metro, and that's a lot of votes. And so unlike the Electoral College versus the popular vote, the number of votes matter. So that's a big win for her. But, we're still a rural state. And so Tom Udall has a much bigger name ID in parts of the rest of the state. He's got offices there. I think he comes from a dynasty, so to speak, in the West at least. Mo Udall and, the Udalls in general, Mark Udall, they've all been, Stuart Udall, I mean, they're huge in the West, so I think he has a big base there. And being one of 100 versus one of, 435 makes a huge difference in terms of being able to raise money. So he has the potential, and I think if it's, for him personally, I think in terms of where he's headed, he doesn't have to resign in order to run. So he's in a good position. He gets to, possibly retain his Senate seat, and if he doesn't make it past the primary, he's still U.S. Senator.
That's right.
So.
Inez, isn't it interesting? If you think about the last cycle, and I want to say this charitably to Democrats who were running this last time around, the bench was fairly thin, if you think about it. But the names these cats are talking about right now, this is a big-time name Democrat kind of thing. And if you toss in Steve Pearce, who on the Republican side, who has said, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Suddenly it expands. These are statewide known people.
Yes.
And interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a gubernatorial race if any of these or all of these candidates get in of some stature and importance. And I think in terms of Udall, I do think he's a big enough name to clear the decks, not because other people aren't scrappy or tough, but because there are possibilities. For example, Governor Udall gets to appoint a successor. And could Senator Michelle Lujan Grisham be the second Latina senator? What happens, at that point?
Yes.
Hector likes to run campaigns, and he does have that northern base, but is he more cautious and knows he'll get reelected as Attorney General and just takes the safer route? So we don't know how all that shakes up. Jeff Apodaca, who's the son of former Governor Jerry, has said he's going to run. And some people on the Republican side have also mentioned Aubrey Dunn.
Oh, no kidding. I hadn't heard that.
And this rumor about Udall is not a new one. He confirmed it a few weeks ago, but it's been going around for probably a year and a half. Somebody noticed that he was fundraising off cycle.
I see.
And they started saying, what is he going to do with this money?
Right.
So who knows if he's going to come back because he's not going to be a committee chair, or one of the other Santa Fe rumors is that his wife is ready to come back to Santa Fe and wants to be at home.
Okay.
So who knows?
That happens.
Yeah.
We got about a minute, Tom, and interestingly, Sarah Gustavus, our producer, made a good crack earlier today about there's going to be a flight out of Washington for Democrats now, possibly coming back to New Mexico. Not just on elected folk, but staffers, like all kinds of people sweeping back into New Mexico.
Oh, they're already coming. Yeah,
Right.
I mean, you have a lot of familiar names who are running for. Have announced that they're running for mayor of the city of Albuquerque. Right. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see. It's a welcome home party for Democrats because Washington is definitely not friendly right now.
There you go. Now, when we come back to the line, our panelists will react to the latest news on reforms underway in the Albuquerque Police Department.